Hello and welcome to this 8-step guide to decoding the shorthand manuscripts of Victorian author Charles Dickens. My name is Dr. Claire Wood and I'm a lecturer in Victorian literature based at the University of Leicester, UK. Together with Professor Hugo Bols from the University of Foggia in southern Italy, we're leading a project called the Dickens Code, which seeks solutions to Dickens's undeciphered shorthand writings. To crack the code, we need the help of puzzle enthusiasts around the world. You don't need to be an expert on Dickens or have had previous shorthand training. All you need is a creative and persistent puzzle-solving mindset. This video introduces Dickens's shorthand before taking you through our 8-step decoding method and 5 top tips. Over to Hugo for the shorthand background and method.
First, some background on Dickens's shorthand. Dickens learned shorthand around the year 1828 at the age of 18. He was self-taught and used a manual called brachyraphy, an 18th century system devised by Thomas Gurney. Dickens then changed Gurney's system to make it easier to use for himself and his pupils. So Dickens's shorthand is really a personalised version of the Gurney system, and in many respects this makes it harder for us to decipher. There are about 12 of Dickens's shorthand manuscripts which survive today. Some of them have been deciphered and some of them haven't. In this video, we'll be looking at the undeciphered manuscripts. Some of these are letters. You can see an example on the right. This is the Tavistock letter which we have used for our Dickens Code transcription prize. And some of them are stories that Dickens used in 1859 as dictation exercises when he was teaching shorthand to his pupil Arthur Stone. Dickens would dictate a story from an unknown source, and he and Arthur would compare their shorthand versions of it. You can see an example of a dictated story here on the grey manuscript in the centre of the slide. The story is called The Two Brothers, and you can see our first attempt at transcription in blue. Thanks to our Dickens Code followers, this page has now been almost completely transcribed, and you can find the transcription on our website. Please check it out because we have yet to find the source of this particular story and we don't yet know where it comes from. The first thing you need to do before you transcribe is to get ready. First, you should download the original text if it's available on the website, like for example the Tavistock letter in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide. Then you need to download the Dickens Code annotator for that text. This is a file available on the website in which the original text has been divided up line by line with a space underneath each line for you to write your transcriptions. Then you should download the DC alphabet. This is a list of all the symbols that Dickens used to write the letters of the alphabet and our notes on these symbols. Finally, you need the DC lexicon of frequent symbols. This is a list of the symbols that Dickens used most often and the words that they stand for. If you use the alphabet and the lexicon carefully and follow the instructions in this video, you should in theory be able to transcribe any piece of Dickens's shorthand. All these files are available in the resources section of our website. Step 2 is to look at the whole text and get as much information out of it as you can. If we take the Tavistock letter as an example, you would first notice at the top of the page the letterhead of Dickens's home address, Tavistock House, Tavistock Square, London. The next thing you might notice is that there are 3 paragraph breaks with short paragraphs at the beginning and the end. So this looks very much like the structure of a letter. Then you might scan the letter for symbols that you already know. My particular favourite is this very striking symbol here, which looks like the @ symbol on our keyboards and stands for the word about or around. Finally, it's useful to notice where sentences begin and end. Dickens has marked the end of a sentence with a long diagonal line, and if you look carefully at the text, you can see 5 of these in the text. When you highlight them, you can see that the first sentence of the second paragraph looks like a particularly long sentence, followed by 1, 2, 3 shorter sentences, and the final paragraph looks to be one long sentence. Step 3 is a reminder to do your deciphering one line at a time. The annotator already has the lines of a text divided up for you. Look at it carefully. What you see is a line of symbols with a space between them. A symbol stands for a letter or a word or a part of a word. A space is either a space between two words, like it would be when we read longhand writing, or a space between two letters. Remember that the same symbol can stand for different letters or words. So as you analyse each symbol, it's a good idea to write every hypothesis that you come up with directly under that symbol. Step 4. You've got your line of shorthand and you know that the symbols on the line are going to be letters or words. But how do you decide whether you're dealing with a letter or a word? First, we need to distinguish between three different types of symbol. The first type is a symbol with a dot immediately to the right. These are quite easy to spot, just look for the dot. And in this line, there are symbols followed by a dot immediately to the right, here, 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 and here. The second type of symbol is a simple symbol, or a symbol with one basic shape. How many symbols left on the slide have just one basic shape? You'd probably say 3, here, here, and here. Finally, we are left with symbols with lots of shapes. These more squiggly shapes are what we call complex symbols. There are 4 of these, here, 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 and here. There are also 2 isolated dots, which can be analysed separately. So, let's analyse these 3 types of symbol one at a time. So, step 5, analysing the symbols with a dot on the right. The first thing to remember is that a symbol with a dot on the right stands for a consonant letter or letters. To work out which consonant letter it is, you look at the shape of the symbol, and then you have to use the DC alphabet, find the symbol on the list, and write down the consonant under the symbol. So in the first yellow box, the vertical line symbol stands for a T. In the second, the diagonal line stands for an S. In the third, which is very difficult, it stands for TH and R. And in the fourth, it stands for W. Now we have to look at the dot. With dots, we first need to remember that a dot immediately after a consonant is going to stand for a vowel. To find out which vowel it is, we need to look at the position of the vowel in relation to the consonant symbol to its left, and see whether it is at the top, in the middle, or at the bottom. A dot which is positioned at the top is going to be an A or an E. In the middle, it's going to be an I or a Y, and a dot on the line at the bottom is going to be an O or a U. So looking at the yellow boxes again, in the first one, the third one, and the fourth one, the dots are on the line, so they're going to be an O or a U. While in the second one, the dot is in the middle position, so we have an I or a Y. In the second box, the dot looks as if it might even be at the top, but this is a problem with the accuracy of Dickens's shorthand writing. We have to be aware that sometimes Dickens's dots aren't exactly on the line, in the middle, or at the top, because he's writing very quickly, and sometimes they might be in the wrong place. So having done the transcriptions for the consonants and the dots separately, we now have to put them together. So putting our consonants and vowels together in each box. In the first box, we've got a T, followed by O or U. In the second one, we've got S, followed by A. In the third one, we've got THR, followed by O or U. And in the fourth one, we've got W, followed by U. Now we need to string these together into words. So the first box looks like the word to, the second looks like say, the third looks like through, and the fourth looks like who. Now we can move on to step 6 and look at the simple symbols, the ones with one basic shape. You'll remember that these simple symbols either stand for a letter like A or T, or for a word like station, or for part of a word like the TION of station. But how do you decide if it stands for a letter or a word? To see if one of these simple symbols stands for a letter, you should use the DC alphabet like you did for the consonant symbol with the dots. Then you should use the DC lexicon to see if the symbol might also stand for a word. Remember, you should write all of these hypothetical letters or words underneath the symbol. So, looking at the blue boxes in our line, you would find that the diagonal line in the first box stands for the letter A or the letter I, which might also mean the first person pronoun I. The sloping line in the second box stands for the letter D or the word did, and the short diagonal line in the third box stands for TH, THED, or the word that. Moving on now to step 7, the complex symbols in the green boxes, you'll remember that these are the more squiggly symbols with more than one shape. These component shapes combine together to make a single word, so our first task is to deconstruct the complex symbol into its component shapes. So let's take each symbol one by one and try to deconstruct them into their component shapes. The first green box can be divided up into 4 component shapes. These shapes are usually going to be consonant letters, so when you have identified the shapes, you look them up in the DC alphabet and write the letter or combinations of letters underneath the shape. So in the first box, we might have N, T, and D, with the third shape a question mark because it's rather hard to identify. In the second box, we also have 4 shapes, W, R, T, and NG. In the third box, we have 5 shapes, C or K, N, D, N, and S. And in the fourth box, we have F, R, N, and D. Now we come to our final step 8, which is to put our hypotheses together. In your annotator, your hypotheses are probably going to be a mixture of single letters, bits of words, and whole words, and probably 1 or 2 question marks. For the line we've been doing in this video, this is what it looks like so far. Here are the annotations for the simple symbols, here are the annotations for the symbols with dots on the right, and here are the annotations for the complex symbols. Our task now is to string the bits together into a string of words which make some sort of sense. So if we try and do some stringing together, there are 10 words which look fairly likely. I, did, writing, to, say, that, through, kindness, friend, and who. Obviously there are some spaces where we're not sure. This happens all the time with deciphering shorthand. The third word with N, T, and D is tricky, and there are the isolated dots to deal with. So we leave them as question marks and maybe do some guessing. Here, anyway, is what Dickens actually wrote in his longhand version. I did intend writing to say that through the kindness of a friend who... So we can see from Dickens's longhand text that the difficult NTD sequence was intend, and the 2 dots stood for the sequence of A. The longhand also has a definite article the for the kindness, which was not marked in the shorthand. So there we have it, the 8-step method for deciphering Dickens's shorthand. First of all, you need to get ready with the text, the annotator for that text, the DC alphabet, and the DC lexicon of frequent characters. Then you need to look at the whole text and get as much information from it as you can, and look particularly for the paragraph breaks, sentence breaks, and immediately recognizable characters. As a general rule, you should look at the text line by line on your annotator and remember to write all possible transcriptions of a symbol underneath the symbol. Then you need to look at the symbols themselves. First, you distinguish the three types of symbol in each line: symbols with dots immediately on the right, simple symbols with a basic shape, and complex symbols which are squiggly and have lots of shapes. Then you look first at the symbols with dots immediately to the right. Analyse the symbol first, which will be a consonant, then analyse the dot, which will be a vowel, and then put the vowel and consonant together. Then you look at the simple symbols with one basic shape and use the alphabet and lexicon to find out if it stands for a letter or a word or perhaps both, and write your transcriptions under the symbol. Then you look carefully at the complex symbols, divide them up into their component shapes, find the letters that the shapes correspond to in the alphabet and lexicon, and write them down. Finally, you look at all your transcribed line as a whole and try to fit your possible transcriptions into a coherent sequence of words that make sense.
Here are 5 top tips from participants in previous decoding workshops. First, we found that you can speed up the deciphering process by keeping your own personal glossary of frequent symbols, such as I and that, to supplement the DC lexicon resource. Second, the context of the sentence can help to inform your guesswork, particularly when paired with tip number 3, to work particularly hard on the first part of the symbol. Once you have the K of a friend, there are only so many combinations that you can come up with, after all. Fourth, it's normal if you just can't decipher something. In such cases, it's better to move on to the next symbol or just walk away and come back later. You could also try asking a friend. Finally, try not to get frustrated. Most sentences include at least one symbol that is practically undecipherable because Dickens wrote these shorthand symbols quickly and messily. Every contribution that you make is valued. We're all learning how to decode together, so whether you can decipher a single symbol, a line, or a whole letter, you really are making a difference. Thanks for joining us today. You can find more decoding resources at our website dickenscode.org, as well as following us on Twitter at Dickens_code.